Hi, everyone. We're going to give it just a second to let everyone get logged in. Okay, it's 10 o'clock. We want to go ahead and get started. We still have a fairly low number on here. So we may give it just another second. Bruce, I can't see if you have a raised hand. We can't allow you to talk. If you put your question in the chat, we can get that answered. So everyone, just so you know, we will be putting any questions that you have in the chat. We will stop periodically to answer those questions. But thank you for joining us for the SBIR overview, how to leverage America's Seed Fund. Conducting our webinar today is Mr. Lou Farina, who is a business analyst with the Maricopa SBDC, who specializes in technology commercialization. And Lou, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Karen. I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. Can everybody see that? Yeah. Okay. Hey, so welcome everyone. Good morning. Lou Farina here from the SBDC. And today we're going to talk about SBIRs, STTRs. So anybody who is potentially interested in this program, you know, if you're just curious or if you're actually applying or plan to apply, I think this will be a good webinar for you. Let's see. So let me just start with just a real high level introduction. So if you are in the startup mode and you're starting to raise funds, you'll know that it's really challenging. And the SBIR program, you know, it's the nation's largest source of early stage high risk funding for startups and businesses. And we'll talk about what early stage is and kind of where it kind of fits in. But it's a real opportunity for a lot of different types of businesses in different stages of their business. So today we're going to talk about, I'm going to just give a very general overview of the startup landscape with respect to capital and funding and kind of where the SBIR fits in sequence. We're going to have Chris Bridgewater, and I'll introduce Chris here in a second. He's going to do an intro to the program, as well as some of the services that Apex can provide. And we've got Jason Noron, from the ACA. He's going to talk about the FAST grant initiatives and any activities going on around the state. And then I'm going to finish up with a little bit of an emphasis on commercialization and what that means in respect to the SBIR and the commercialization sections that will see if you're filling out an application. So let me introduce these guys. I'll introduce myself first. Again, Lou Farina, technology commercialization from the SBDC. My background is in corporate ventures. I was an angel investor here in town, so I'm familiar with the process, the early stage process. I review for the National Science Foundation, so I review SBIRs, fairly familiar with it in the program in general. So Chris Bridgewater is on. Chris can introduce himself when we start a section, but let me just give you a real quick overview. Chris is a very experienced business startup and strategy development person. I know he's got a lot of experience with U.S. government contracting. He works in an organization in our tangential to our group called the Apex Accelerator. They do government contracting, but he's also got a lot of experience with SBIRs. And so, Chris, I'll give you a chance to give yourself another introduction when you start. And then we have Jason Noron from the ACA. Jason is an innovation project manager for the Arizona Commerce Authority. For those of you who don't know, the state is a recipient of what we call an SBIR FAST grant. That FAST grant is actually administered by the ACA. And so there's some really interesting and good things that can happen to support the ecosystem. And Jason's going to give us an overview of what's going on there. So let me start real quick. And let me tell you about the SBDC. So at the SBDC, we are part of the America's SBDC network, which is a national organization. So we are a program. We're not the government. We're not the SBA. We're partially funded by the SBA. We're partially funded by the community college district. We actually live in the community college district. But what that really means to our clients is they get no fee business advisory services. And we do lender readiness. There's a lot of folks that come in, and probably not this crowd, SBIR crowd, but there's a lot of folks that we serve that are looking for SBA loans. We help them prepare and get ready and provide analysis. And with that, there's financial review. We've got some marketing resources and buying, selling businesses, technology commercialization, export. Government contracting is handled by Apex, and I'll let Chris talk more about that. And then, at the bottom here, disaster loan assistance. That should really just come off the slide at this point, because we did a lot of EIDL and PPP loans during the pandemic. So that's kind of past us. So what we do primarily is counseling. So if you sign up for the SBDC services, you get what we call counseling. It's advisory service. And so it's no fee, and it's one-on-one, totally confidential. So you get assigned an advisor. If you're doing an SBIR, you'll probably get myself or maybe another fella that's in our group. We do training. This is considered training. Training is our webinars and other kind of educational kind of activities. They're no fee. They're on our website. And then we've got some resources, financial resources, business planning resources, market research resources that are no fee that we can provide to our clients. So that's a little bit of an overview of the SBDC. So let's just start here. And before I start Startup Capital, if anybody would like to share in the chat what their experience is with regard to SBIRs. Are you curious about the program? You heard about it? Have you applied? Are you beginning a proposal process? Have you applied and been denied? Have you applied and been successful? So if you'll just throw that into the chat real quick, and if Karen's here to help monitor that. Let's see. All right, I can see the chat now. Okay. We got just curious, Don, Ron, beginning the initial process, preliminary discussions. Hi, Dara, Neil, beginning proposal writing. Okay. All right. All right. So we got some folks in the beginning, and that's good. One more is working with a program officer, fell short, submitting fast track. Oh, budget waiver. Okay. Bessie, I call and ask for help. Okay. So thank you very much. So good. I think we got the right audience here. What I wanted to do was just start and just talk about, startup capital. And that's a real big subject, especially if you're in a capital intensive industry. So, there's really three ways, three ways. I like to say two ways, but there's, we can talk about grants. There's usually equity capital. Equity is, somebody coming in for an ownership stake in your business. And that's an investor. And then a lender does debt. Debt is a secured or unsecured vehicle that allows them, the lender, to loan you funds with the promise that you're going to pay it back, right? So debt, you're paying it back. Equity, you're not paying anything back. They own either a piece of your revenue, profit stream, or, upon the valuation, maybe an exit. And that's how they kind of recover their money. But underlying, there are grants. And usually when folks come to the SBDC and start with, hey, I want to start my business. What free money is available from the government to do that? What kind of grants? And it's usually a pretty short conversation, because there's really not a lot. However, the SBIR program, if they qualify, they're innovative, they're technology focused, typically, that's an option for grants, and that's a significant amount of funding to get you started. So that's kind of where we are. In terms of startup capital, what you'll know, and you probably already know, first startup capital is the most difficult. It absolutely is. There's a lot of competition for limited resources of financing, whether it be loans, whether it be equity with investors. And you hear a lot of stories. But the truth is, if you are a serial entrepreneur and you've had a successful exit or two, that means you've created a company, you've created value, and you've sold that, and you've done good by your investors. Typically, it's a lot easier to raise money on the second or third time. When we hear these stories of people easily raising money, a lot of times they kind of fall into this bucket. And let's just talk a little bit about startup debt. We talked about lending. I'm just going to talk real quickly about debt. Lenders are really risk averse. So they tend not to like to lend early stage companies. Now, if you talk to, you'll see, if you go to the SBA website, you'll see, oh, there's loans for startups. So if you ask a banker what a startup is, banker will tell you, oh yeah, they've been in business for, approximately 2 years. That means, revenue, cash flow, profits, whatever. And that's really not our definition of a startup, right? Our definition of startup is a lot earlier than that. So bankers typically don't like to lend early stage companies unless you've got collateral or can secure it somehow. So the decision factors that usually come in on a loan, if you can qualify for a loan, is do you have experience in the field? Do you have a cash down payment? Right? We'll talk a little bit about self-financing here, but even if it's a loan, you have to have some what we call skin in the game, cash down payment. How mature is the product? First thing they'll run is your personal credit, right? Because you're gonna, all SBA loans are personally guaranteed. So it's, even though it's loan to the business, you will wind up personally guaranteeing it. Do you have any collateral to secure it? Do you have a building? Do you have anything that they can attach to? Do you have a good business plan? That's important. Good story. And then industry sector appetite. Lenders are like investors. They have portfolios and they get heavy in certain areas and they get light in other areas. And if you come in with a new medical device, while you might be eligible for a loan, they may have a lot of medical devices in their portfolio, may not want you. And there's really no way to know that unless you shop it around. And that's something that our group can actually help you do. So there's some stages, and I wanted to work through this real quick. So there's a sequence typically for funding, and early on, usually you've got the first money in is usually yours, and we say self, and who's the second money in? We always joke as self, as an investor. So yeah, usually you have to have some kind of investment in time, but also in cash. And then we get into the next stage, which is kind of the pre-seed round or pre-seed stage. And this is when you may go to friends and family. You may go to some other public sources. You may utilize crowdfunding. You may get involved with an accelerator, or you may be able to pick up a grant here and there, or an SBIR. And so that's a lot of activity, a lot of different options to help get you going. And once you get going and you secure some funding from these other sources, then you can talk to typically an angel group or a local venture fund. And so, these are angel investors are high net worth individuals that will invest in early stage companies. Local venture funds are typically entrepreneurs who have exited and have started their own fund. So they'll invest with themselves or maybe a couple of partners. And then if you get through that and you still need more funding, there's corporate venture, then there's venture capital. That's kind of later. And then there's IPO, private equity, and most of us never ever see that. So this is kind of the progression. And the thought is here, I just wanted to show you where the SBIR typically fits. Now, you could get an SBIR later down the road. There are existing businesses that go and apply for SBIRs. But the vast majority, at least that I start with or work with, are really in the early stages. It's probably some of their first funding. So let's see. Let's just talk about why investors like SBIRs. This is going to be my last slide, and then I think I'm going to turn it over. I think it's to Chris. Let's see. So we like SBIR. It's because it's an early capital injection. Right? We just saw in the sequencing. It's money that comes in before other investors will come in. It's non-dilutive, which means the government doesn't take any ownership of your of your business. So of course, investors are going to like that, right? There's a level of validation. There's some scientific vetting. When you go for an SBIR, they'll have some scientific experts look at it, and then they'll have some commercialization experts look at it. And so there's a level of vetting that, if you get an SBIR from the NIH or the DoD or the NSF, that they've looked at it and they think it's promising. With the early capital, it de-risks the investment. So we think about money going in as an investor, as retiring risk. There's activity, it's a proof of concept, something early that we have a little more confidence that this will work as either a technology and or business. However, simply receiving an SBIR grant doesn't mean the company is necessarily a good investment. So while I'd say investors like SBIRs, it's not necessarily that they love SBIRs. It will give you it will give you some additional credibility. It will retire some risk, but you still got to have the other piece of the story, the business plan, and access to capital to make this happen, to get investors much more interested. So with that, I'm just gonna pause here, take any questions. Oh, actually, we're gonna do Jason. Jason's gonna be next. So, but any questions on my first section?
No questions so far.
No questions so far. Okay. All right. Well, that's just the intro. We're going to get into the SBIR stuff here now. So I'm going to stop sharing. And Jason, you can.
I will take over.
Feel free to introduce yourself, Jason. Yeah.
Thank you, Lou. That was fantastic. I think that gave a really good overview about why SBIR is so important. And it's definitely one of the programs that we at the Arizona Commerce Authority want to support as much as possible. I'll start with a little introduction about myself and what the Arizona Commerce Authority does. Then I'll get into our FAST grant program. So my name is Jason Orr. I'm a project manager at the Arizona Commerce Authority. For the most part, I help support startups. I help support our startup ecosystem. And I do some collaboration across the ecosystem to kind of improve our functionality. The Arizona Commerce Authority is the state of Arizona's economic development agency. So we support business across the state, from the smallest businesses to our largest corporate partners. In particular, my division, the innovation division, works with particularly small businesses and startup companies. So I would assume that applies to most of you in this call today. But we have several programs to support early stage ventures, helping you get funding, understand how to grow and expand your business. And specifically our FAST program helps you apply for and obtain competitive SBIR and STTR grants. So what is the Arizona FAST program? So the Federal and State Technology Partnership Program is a federal grant administered by the Small Business Administration that supports small businesses in research and development to advance innovative technologies. In particular, it is helping them through outreach programs like today's webinar, just to increase your knowledge of SBIR and STTR, just to improve the number of applicants coming from Arizona. It provides financial support. So the actual AZ FAST grant will cover a certain portion of your, well, it gives you funds to support a competitive SBIR grant application. And then technical assistance. This webinar, along with some of the other things we run, and I can maybe give more details about that towards the end. We'll do trainings. We will partner with consultants to just help improve your understanding and the state's understanding of SBIR and improve the quality and quantity of our SBIR and STTR applicants from the state of Arizona. So what is the AZ FAST grant and how am I eligible for it? So the AZ FAST grant supplies $3,000 towards supporting an SBIR and STTR grant application. You must use that for performing R&D or preparing a grant application. to an SBIR program. And I think Lou will come back and explain a little bit more about what those applications look like at the end of the webinar. But to apply for the AZ FAST, you must be a US company. In particular, we want you to be an Arizona company. We want you to be under 500 people, and the research must be done here. We also partner with our state's universities as part of the Core Facilities Network. You can, through the Core Facilities Network, access some really good lab space, along with some really costly equipment. We also offer a grant called the Advanced Manufacturing Facilities Grant that will match your research and development costs to use certain lab space at Arizona State University. And that's really for semiconductor companies, or advanced manufacturing companies. So it may not be applicable to all of you, but if you're interested, I can talk a little bit more about that towards the end. Actually, we're kind of coming up on it now. So I would recommend you all check out our website. We have our SBIR and STTR resources page. You can do that by scanning this QR code or search on Google Arizona Commerce Authority SBIR. You'll be able to find the page from there. You'll be able to find links to our AZ FAST grant application. We should have another cohort of the AZ FAST grant opening up sometime this summer. So we'll do another round of that. We'll select, I think, 10 applicants to receive that money towards a competitive grant application. You'll be able to look at our SBIR consultant page. You'll be able to access old webinars and workshops and get advice around our SBIR programs. So I know that was pretty fast, just like the FAST grant, but I'd be happy to take any questions around what the Arizona Commerce Authority does or the FAST program, if you want to pop them in chat.
Jason, so you're going to leave us, but if anybody has any follow-up questions for Jason, here's his email. We can put you in contact with Jason.
Yes. Right, and I didn't plug them, and I think I will. Oh, here. Jason will be a press release to the award companies earlier this year. Tim, thanks for that question. I will follow up with our marketing team to see exactly what's going on with that. So yeah, I will write that down as a task to do. In full transparency, we've just been going through some staffing things right now. So we've been moving a little slower on our SBIR and FAST programs right now. I am not typically the point person on this, but I will be happy to pass that along to the correct person.
All right, then. Why don't we go ahead, Jason?
Sorry, Lou. I just want to plug. I should have plugged this earlier, but I want to plug quickly everything else that we have at the Arizona Commerce Authority. If you're a small business, we do have our small business team, which can provide some kind of unique support to you if you call in or use the Join Us form on our website. We also offer a few other programs. We're launching some new accelerators in fall 2024. So be on the lookout for that. And of course, our Arizona Innovation Challenge is our premier program. That is a $150,000 to the top 10 companies that win. And you'll be entered into our Venture Ready Accelerator program, get one-on-one mentorship, and 6 months of kind of training through our accelerator. So the AIC applications will open August 1st. Be on the lookout for that. If you are a startup company, you may not be necessarily at the stage where you will be a competitive applicant. So if you're like, I'm really early and I don't think I'm going to win this, please apply for the AIC. Just applying for the AIC, you will get some one-on-one, well, not some one-on-one, you will get some mentoring from our mentor community and our judges. So it's always worth applying. Okay, Lou, that's it for me.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Jason. Let's move on. We're going to have Chris Bridgewater share his slides. Chris, again, is from Apex, and I will let Chris introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. Can you see my slide here? The green bar is not there. All right, let me know if you can't see it. So Thanks, Lou, for having me here. SBIR. So AZ Apex is the Apex Accelerator. It is funded by the Department of Defense. We're hosted at the Maricopa Community Colleges, and I am down in Tucson, Arizona. So what AZ Apex does is help companies unwind the mystery of doing business with the government. So dealing with FAR clauses, dealing with DCAA, cost accounting standards, dealing with CMMC compliance, ITAR compliance. The acronyms go on and on and on. The questions go on and on and on. Certifications, WSB, VOSB, 8A, all that stuff. That's kind of all the stuff that we help with. So SBIR is one of my favorite things. I've personally received in a previous career running a business as the president and CEO of another business. I have received millions of dollars worth of SBIR funding. And then I've been a part of, at this point, probably close to 100, if not over 100 SBIRs, writing the proposals, helping to review them, managing them, all that stuff, technology development, and writing not just SBIRs. I do a lot of work with government contracts in general that are not SBIRs. So SBIR versus STTR. The SBIR is for just the top level, description is SBIR is for a business. Okay, and you're not gonna, you can do a joint venture, you can partner with another business. In some cases, it's allowed. But for an STTR, it's where you're going to work with typically it's with a university, or with a scientific research like one of the national labs. You can do some of that stuff. Typically, I will say if you're looking at STTR and doing something, I mean, it's probably not anybody doing that, but if anybody in this group is looking at STTR, but you want to work with the national lab, I like the CRADAs better. There's not as much paperwork involved. The process is a lot easier to do a CRADA with a national lab as opposed to going after an STTR and you just get the SBIR. That works a lot. That's just a smoother process. So the SBIR is it could be for applied or basic research, and the phase ones can be anywhere from, I've seen them as low as 30,000, 75,000, 150,000. It can be 3 months, 6 months, up to a year, depending on what agency you're in. The phase two, the phase one, I kind of joke that the phase one is really just money to write the phase two proposal. So the phase two proposals are, typically 750,000 to up to 2 million. They do go higher than that, but that's kind of rare. Depends on the project, depends on the agency. Phase two is usually about a year long. And the expectation is that after the end of the phase two, you have a product that is, TRL 8, TRL 9, that is commercialable. And on the commercial, I won't go. I know Lou's going to go into commercialization, but the commercialization strategy is huge in getting the SBIR, because the SBIR it's an investment. The mandate, since the 80s when this program came out, the mandate is that this program is supposed to generate a project or a product or a service or a technology that'll be used in the commercial sector, not just in the government sector. Two things for that. One is that they don't want the product to fail because the government is the only customer, and that may not sustain the company. And two, they just want to increase the advance the level of technology available to the commercial sector. Okay, let me see if I can do this up real quick. You're just gonna see this whiz by there. All right, so finding your topic or open topic, it's there. The primary place to go is SBIR.gov, or you can go to the defense SBIR.gov. SBIR STTR.mil is where those are going to be found at, but your primary portal is going to be SBIR.gov. You'll see some postings on SAM, such as the open topics that never really close. You know, it's open for a year. It closes, you know, October 31st, opens again September 1st. Okay. I'm sorry, November 1st. So grants.gov, you'll find stuff there, but personally I prefer to just find all my SBIR topics through SBIR.gov. Okay. Broad agency announcements, you can also find if there's a particular agency that you want to work for. Sometimes it's easier to find those broad agency announcements on that agency's website. I know, for instance, the DHS came out with some new BAAs, and it's just much easier to read those on their website than it is to read it on the grants or the SBIR.gov site. Yeah, it's a cornucopia of agencies. Almost every agency offers an SBIR or STTR program. Even the NSA. What's interesting though is that the NSA does not publish what the topics are. It's an invite only. This is from the person who does the NSA program. Is they email you if they want you to do a project for them. So any agency that you know thinks that you think could use your technology or your product, or even if you say you have a you have a technology, you have a software, you have a product, medical device, whatever it is, and with a little bit of adjusting or tweaking, it could be used for other applications. You definitely want to look at other agencies. There have been times where there's been joint funding. Once an SBIR contract has been awarded, other agencies can sometimes apply funding, take their funding and put it into that contract vehicle because it's already been competed, and make it so that they can use it if it falls under the same PEO. The thing with that is, like, if you got a major command that is managed is a joint command, and then they have other things underneath them that all use similar devices or the same sort of mission set, then they'll have the same funding that comes from the top level, and that's how they can transfer that money down because it's for the same similar device or technology development. So this is for the NSF topic areas, and this is sort of across the board of the entire government. All agencies are looking for something in this. Every agency is gonna have something that they're interested in for their own, purposes. Especially the advanced manufacturing, advanced materials, AI. It seems like every single agency is looking for AI items. Semiconductors. I mean, Department of Defense, NSF, NIH, like they're all looking for semiconductor stuff. Okay. Space a little more limited. Mostly Space Force, Air Force, NASA, obviously, and a couple others. Okay. All right, this one I threw in because when you get an SBIR, a lot of times the agency may ask you to work with another one of these GSEs or with one of these other actual government agencies. So some of these, AFWERX is a really powerful organization. They can move money very fast. They can spend a lot of money, and they're interested in a lot of different things. These other ones, such as like the DIU, it's an entity that is quasi-sponsored by the government, and they've been mandated by the government to go invest in things that the government wants, that the Defense Department wants, right? But they operate more like a venture capital firm than they do a government agency, but they do provide non-dilutive funding, and they have like these top-up programs where you get an SBIR, and there's X amount of dollars from the SBIR with the plan to get X amount of dollars from the DIU. and you pass, you get a green light for both, and then you get both sources of funding awarded to you. So, like ERDIC works, they're a pipeline for getting into the engineering research development center for, this is mostly through the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So once you start Googling these, start looking these up, you'll find a lot of other agencies that you'll be interested in applying to and exploring. How to apply, right? How I applied, I went to SBIR.gov, filled out the application, submitted all the documentation. Mine was some of mine were a little bit different. I ended up doing I did a pitch, and a lot of agencies, I was just in a conference in Chicago where all the agencies, majority, there's dozens of agencies that talked about what their plans are for their SBIR and their STTR funding. And a lot of them are moving to a preliminary 4-page white, slick sheet, if you will, paper, very, very quick summary, very succinct summary on what they're doing, because they're getting such a high volume of applications. They're moving to a 4-page preliminary before they invite you to do a full 25-page presentation, or go to them, in person and do a pitch and meet with them. More and more agencies are adopting the AFWorks pitch model and taking that. So I'm not sure if you've never, the process to apply is a little bit different for all of them. And the timeline is a little bit different for all of them. AFWorks, it was literally like weeks. And then for things like the NIH, it can be months or even a year before the funding really rolls in. And it's just a matter of, they provide a template for every single thing that you need to do. You can download the templates, you fill out the templates, and they tell you what font size it needs to be, what color it needs to be, with the line spacing. I mean, they tell you everything, and you just have to fill out the content. Okay. Review the solicitation. This is not all inclusive, right? So they're going to ask for quad charts. They may ask, a lot of this stuff I should add in here, that they're going to have more emphasis on commercialization and what your forecast is for, some of them may ask for a financial forecast for 3 years. They may want to see that. I've had to provide that before. So you need to maybe be prepared for that. And if you don't have, a history of revenues, then you'll have to do your best to extrapolate based on your market research of what the market demand is going to be for the commercialized version of this product, or the actual version of this product. You may be making, a medical device that's going to be used by 200,000 patients, and you have to prove how you're going to get to that. And they're really, really keen on that stuff, because they really want to see that you've identified the risks and how you're going to address those risks. Not that you can't say, oh, that this is the risk and we don't think we need to be concerned with this. This is how we're going to handle that if this occurs. I won't steal Lou's thunder. I'll let him have that. Yeah. So average time to draft proposal, yeah, you'd say between 200 and 300 hours. It depends on the size of the proposal, the volume, really depends on how much money and time you're going to expect the proposal or the project to take. A phase 1 proposal, I'd say if you give yourself, if it's you and 2 or 3 other people and it's your first one, I'd say give yourself at least a good healthy 3 weeks to work on that. Drafting, revising, rereading, and there's a whole process. One thing I will say when you're drafting these is is write it as much as, work 10 hours a day on it for 6 days, and then take a break for a day where you don't even think about it, you don't even look at it, then go back and read it again, and you'll see that you've made mistakes, or you didn't really answer the question that they were asking, you didn't really address the issue that they were asking. It happens all the time. And it's imperative that you give yourself, work that time in to take that break from it, so that you don't get I guess a normalcy bias to your own writing. You don't want to suffer from that. The other thing is the pricing. You really want to do you really, there's a lot of restrictions on what can be spent, how the money can be spent in your project. Okay, how much money you can spend on new equipment. If you say, well, we're going to spend $250,000 on a new 3D printer, that may be above the threshold of what you're allowed to purchase. And so you need to take some time and go through the regulations of what you're allowed to purchase, how much money you're allowed to spend. There's a limit to how much money you could pay to consultants and subcontractors. If depending on what you're working on, there may be a limit to what kind of there may be citizenship requirements for the PI that's going to be working on the project. I know this is kind of going down the road here, but these are problems I've encountered or worked with clients on. If your PI has another full-time job, right? The agency may look at your LinkedIn accounts and see that your PI has another full-time job, and like, yeah, you're hoodwinking us, because you can't have this PI working 40 hours for you and 40 hours a week for them. It's not going to work. So take all that stuff, you got to read through the regulations. That's what really takes a lot of time. It's reading through the regulations, reading through the templates, understanding what it is they're asking, and doing your best to answer all those questions and address all those issues. And so hopefully all of you have the ability to divide and conquer on these proposals, where you have your technical expert, your PI. You're going to have a PI on the SBIR. You have your PI that's drafting the content. Okay, your chief engineer is drafting the plan on how the research is going to be conducted. Okay, and then you have your BD side, or your commercialization side, that's just focusing on market analysis, market research, understanding doing the pest analysis and all that stuff, doing the who, what, who cares, why you kind of questions and all that stuff, doing the business model canvas, mission model canvas, whatever it is. Hopefully you have the power or the ability to separate all that stuff out. So you don't have, if you're just writing it by yourself, that's really rough. I feel sympathy for anybody that's trying to do that. Anyway, I'm rambling on there. Get on to the next one. Yeah, the due dates. The only thing I'll say on obviously due dates are what they are. The only thing I'll say is, if it's due on a Friday and the server opens on a Wednesday, do your best to try and get that submitted on a Wednesday, because they could get hundreds, if not 1,000 proposals, okay, going into this server, and they have to run it all through their virus scanning. They have to run it through their checks to make sure that the file format's compatible, that there's no issues. I think one time I had a weird issue where I had had this really intense graphic in one of the PowerPoints, and it threw up a red flag and had to re-upload it. So give yourself lots of time to do that upload. Do not wait until the last day, if at all possible, because you may just have an issue where the server's not taking it, the communication issue, or whatever the case may be. Once you typically, for all of you, that's your first time, usually in these portals, when you upload your documents, if you find an error later, let's say you upload it on a Wednesday morning, it's not due till Friday, you upload it on Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, you find an error, you can typically go in there and upload the new document with the corrections in it, and there won't be any issues. I don't think I've ever, maybe Lou has, but I've never come across a time where once you upload it, that's it. You can't upload another one. Oh, thanks, Lou. Yep. I talked about this. Just read through everything there's little bits buried in paragraphs about what needs to be done. And you can miss something really important buried inside of an applicant. Yep. Thousands of applicants. I was competing against 500 of the people that submitted for the same proposal. Somehow it was me and like 3 other companies that won it. It's, and don't be discouraged if you don't win it. It's just keep trying. Keep trying. DoD. Okay, I'll say this. Another thing that they're really looking at is market and is customer and end user. Okay, especially if you're doing something for the DoD, you need to be very as connected to the end user as possible. This is most important in the DoD. Okay, it's becoming more important for the health agencies, where they want you to have a better understanding of like patients' needs. Okay, customer may be the hospital, but the end user is the patient, and so they want you to have a better understanding of the patient's needs. Phase 1 proof of concept. Okay, so everybody, if you're writing stuff down, check out TABA funding. It's a really good program to help you get some help on your commercialization strategy. I've been part of that. It's a very I know this is not accidental, but it's out there. You need to be aware of it. Okay. Phase 2. So phase 1, you're just trying to get it to like a breadboard test. Okay, a breadboard test. It's on the benchtop testing, whatever the case may be, or an advanced CFD FEA analysis. Okay, that's done in a virtual simulation. It's kind of what they're expecting in the phase 1. Okay, but like I said, phase 2, they want to get it to a commercialization stage where you can actually sell this product. Yeah, SBIR tutorials are out there. And I recommend that the stuff that they have on the SBA site, it's really good resources. I highly recommend. It's worth taking the time, because you can get multiple SBIRs. If you go on usaspinning.gov, you can look at companies that have received hundreds of SBIRs. They're just, I call them SBIR mills. And so it's worth it to understand the ins and outs of SBIRs, and everything is publicly available. Okay, and make sure it's from a .gov. Don't use SBIR.com or anything like that. Resources: SBIR.gov, the SBDC, Apex. If you are looking for me, AZ, Apex. Consultants, be careful with consultants. A lot of them, the problem with consultants is, because I was one, is they don't understand everything, all the nuances of your company. And so you have to pay them a lot of money to get in there and learn about your company before they can even write an effective proposal for you. Okay. And CRADAs and technology partners, university resources, doing studies, things like that. There's a lot really good, some really good resources. Okay, well, that's all I have. Hopefully I did not go over too long. How do I get out of this? I am stuck in screen. There we go.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. That was great. Now time check. I think we're good. I'm gonna talk about commercialization, and then we'll take some other questions. But let's pause now. I mean, Chris went through a lot of material. There's a lot to this. I think probably the one takeaway is get some help if you're going to go down this road, either from myself or Chris or somebody else who's knowledgeable. So any questions, put them in the chat for now. Chris, you could see the chat, yeah. You're muted. There you go.
Thanks. If you would, sure. No, not always. It's not usually the the STTR requirements will leave it up to the discretion of the two parties to figure out what the intellectual property rights are going to be. And typically what I've had is the STTR or the university. I've partnered with universities before, and what the university wants is usually just they usually just want credit. They usually just want their name on the patent, because they're not they're not making products. They're not a manufacturer, right? So they just want credit for it so that they can put it into their press releases that they're out there doing great things for the world. Can you use the funds to hire someone to serve? Yeah, that's going to be tough, because if you don't already have the PI, then in the eyes of the agency, you don't have the talent to perform the work. Okay. I'm not saying you don't. I don't understand your situation, but I'm just saying from a black and white sort of interpretation of the regulations, you need to have the talent. If you're out there trying to create a new spaceship that's going to go to Mars, like they want you to have a PhD astrophysicist or something, jet propulsion engineer, things like that. Okay. So if you don't already have that, then they're like, well, what are you doing designing jets if you don't have the jet propulsion engineer on your staff already, right? But other things, assistants or technical engineers, engineering technicians, things like that, in your proposal, in your price proposal, you can put TBH, to be hired, and that'll pass a lot of the times. Yes, you can use SBIR as a means to hire employees. Yeah, to hire, like I just said, if you already have a chief engineer, or if you are the chief engineer, are you going to hire technicians to work in the lab, things like that, then you put in there TBH, to be hired, and then you just use data from the BLS or the census that gives you the average salary for that position in your area, in your geographic location, and put that in as what you're going to pay that person. Okay. Is that John? Is that John? John? Good to see you, John.
All right. I think any follow-up questions, you can get in touch with Chris or myself. So please.
Well, look at all these people I know. Sorry, I've been busy talking. All these people.
All these people, yeah.
It's good to see all these people.
All right. So I'm going to move on. Thank you, Chris. To the commercialization section. And I'm glad, Chris, and we hadn't really talked the first time we're doing this together, the emphasis on commercialization. I'm glad you did, because I'm going to put another point on it, and really, I think as Chris put it, and maybe I'll put it a little differently, while you will look at an SBIR as a project, with a start and a stop and a plan and an output, it's really a business. It's really a start of a business. And so you've got to think about it in terms of a business from the beginning. And that's kind of what these agencies will look for when they ask you to write a commercialization section. Okay, that means how are you going to commercialize this? It's not just another research project. It's awarded to a business for purposes of economic development. So that's how it differs from a lot of different grants. So let me just talk in general about commercialization plans. You'll hear about this. Each agency has their own term, depending on who you're working with. And I think you've picked up probably what from Chris, from his overview, is there's a lot of nuance based on the agency you select. So you have to be familiar with it, but you'll see things like commercialization strategy, commercial opportunity, like potential post application. But they're different requirements, they're different titles, but there are some common themes. And what I'm going to do is just go through some of the themes with you instead of taking you through how to write a commercialization plan. But let's talk about dual purpose. And this is based on the DoD, and I think Chris highlighted this also. So, right, the DoD doesn't want to be your only customer. So what they'll look for in their proposal is, how is this technology product going to sell to the to the commercial space? So simultaneously, like a plan to sell to commercial customers is important. So why is that important from the DoD's perspective? It spreads the development cost over the entire enterprise, right? If you got volume for certain components, you get lower pricing units for the supply chain and the efficiencies. Having a broad commercial base in addition to a government customer is very attractive to private capital, help you raise more money than basically saying, I'm going to make a widget for simply the Department of Defense for this particular agency for this particular purpose. And one of the things I think that I'd like to emphasize that Chris mentioned is, you talk about phase 3, and phase 3 is a little nebulous, but if from a DoD perspective, it actually means a production contract. So they could seed you with an SBIR phase 1, phase 2, and then the hope is that they will invoke a production contract and actually buy that from you. I mean, that's kind of the intent. So that's that's why it's important if you're doing DoD commercialization plans to talk about the commercial potential. Okay, I'm going the wrong way. Okay, so what is the commercialization plan just at a high level? So it gauges the economic potential. So, when you're in the business like we are of economic impact, revenue, jobs, taxes, does it have a societal impact? NSF has got a, big section on the broader impact, it's the term broader impacts, right? So, and the commercialization plan is your primary opportunity to describe that strategy. So it's how to get to revenue for the proposed project, but how are you actually going to generate revenue? And that's a very different mindset for a lot of folks coming out of the technical end or the academic end of things. It's also a roadmap to show you how you're going to generate profits from your innovation. And it's really the beginning of the business plan, and it starts to look like an investor pitch. So, all the work, if you've done your business plan and an investor pitch and you're going to go write an SBIR, you could probably reuse a lot of that information for your commercialization plan, and vice versa. If you're writing an SBIR for the first time, you haven't done a business plan, the process is going to force you to write certain sections and think along certain lines that you'll be able to utilize for your business plan or your investor pitch. So it's not wasted effort. It's important, I think I emphasize this, it's because they're not classic research grants. It shifts the paradigm of a lot of research-oriented applicants. Again, right now, I stepped into this, now I'm an entrepreneur, right? I'm not just a scientist. And the commercialization plan, as Chris pointed out, has been significantly weighted in application scoring and is really getting to be more highly weighted for certain agencies. So it's an important piece. So again, I'm going to run you through some themes here, just things to think about as you're writing your plan. And I review a lot of commercialization plans as well as the SBIR proposals in whole. But I usually have a lot to say on the commercialization side. And when I do reviewing for the NSF, it's usually not as a technical expert. Well, it's never as a technical expert. It's more as the commercialization kind of resource to help them balance out their weighting criteria to make sure that this looks like it could be a business. So one of the themes is language, right? So now you're an entrepreneur. Well, there's a language to entrepreneurship. If you've taken any courses, business model canvas, words that you should and could use in your commercialization plan. And when I do reviews, a lot of times I will help people. Oh boy, My internet connection's giving me problems. Hopefully I'm still there.
You're freezing up just a little bit.
Am
Just,
I?
just a little. Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
terrible.
Okay. Hopefully we get through this real quick. So again, just the language, knowing the language, and being able to work with somebody who can help you put the language into your commercialization section. There is, there is an important set of activities called discovery and validation. And this is important. This is like, how do you, like, all right, I think this is a business. I think this is going to work. How do you know what you know? Right? I mean, what did you do to discover this problem? Who have you talked to? And this is important. This is really, really important. A lot of SBIR applicants will come out of ICOR, and NSF's got an ICOR, and some of the other agencies have ICOR. ICOR is a program, and it's a grant for you to really create a business plan. It really gives you entrepreneurship, education, as well as it's forced discovery. So, one of the things in an ICOR program, you see somebody going through an ICOR program, it's customer interviews or partner interviews. And they, at the national level, I was a mentor once. We had to do 100 in 6 weeks. Some of the regional ones, it's 30 to 50, but that forces you to get what they call get out of the building and talk to people and to validate your idea. So important part of the commercialization plan. Who's your team and your advisors? All right, so you have your technical team. You don't even need to have these folks as part of the proposal, but you could have a board of advisors that you discuss, and these are your go-to people for things that you don't know. This is a big part of entrepreneurship in general, is to seek out, establish relationships with folks that are going to give you either added domain expertise, but you're probably starting with some domain expertise, but maybe things that you don't know. Maybe you'll put on a marketing expert or somebody who's got a lot of maybe experience in raising capital. So creating a board of advisors and stating who those board of advisors are is important. It doesn't have to be, the board of advisors doesn't have to be formal. It doesn't have to include any equity stake. Advisor stake is typically half 2% or so. You don't need to do that, especially for this activity. Well, we talked a little bit about this, and this is a Steve Blank slide. What's your revenue model? The business and revenue model. How are you going to monetize this? You have to think about it. Where are you in the supply chain? Where does the money come from? Who are the customers? This is kind of important. And we're asking for a lot, but we're asking at this point, we being maybe the SBIR agency, is asking for your best guess and why you think it's your best guess. Typically when you start out on business venture and you think you've got the right business model and a revenue model, and typically it changes to a certain extent as you learn more. But you got to start somewhere. So having a foundational structure and knowledge for business and revenue model is very, very important. Another thing is they'll ask you, and this is really pretty simple, but what is the market size, right? How big is the market? How do you measure the size of the market? And you can do this a couple of ways. You can go what we call count noses, do a bottoms up, estimate. But more impactful, especially for an SBIR, is to use some third-party market research that talks about your market and the size of it and the growth, the CAGR. CAGR is the compound annual growth of this market. So how big is it and how fast is it growing? Small market growing fast, big market growing slow, small market growing slow. We've got some, I've got IBIS World reports that are pretty comprehensive that I can provide to you to help you fill out this section. So let's see, what else do I have? Competition. They'll ask you about your competition, and this isn't necessarily a lot of folks will answer this from a technical perspective. Like I'm going to look at competing technologies. Well, that's not exactly what they're looking for all the time. A lot of time they want to know, who are the companies and what is their market position, and what is their product position? How does it compare? For a phase one, I mean, you got to write a paragraph, maybe two. So it's not a full up competitive analysis. For a phase two, typically it's a little bit more involved, but again, important to know your competition. A lot of folks, on the innovation space think it's innovative, it's different, there is no competition, but I will tell you as a reviewer and as an investor, there's always competition, and being able to identify who that competition, whether it's direct or indirect, is really critical to your own credibility, honestly. They're going to ask you, how are you going to fund this thing post SBIR, even concurrent with the SBIR? And knowing the difference between, who the angel investors are and who the venture capitalists are, and when you might approach them is important. There'll be an opportunity for you to write a section on this. If you say, we're going to go from an SBIR or phase one, and we're going to have meetings with venture capital because we're going to raise $5 to $10 million. That typically means that you really don't understand the landscape and the environment, right? So, I think it's fair to say in the SBIR world that there are some other funding mechanisms, and you might talk about who the angel investors are in your town, or who maybe in your vertical that are out of your town, but who in the domain on the angel side might you approach? That adds a lot of credibility. So let's see, commercialization plans. Oh, this is just an overview. DoD for phase one is, I don't know, a page or so, depends on the agency. NSF, it's 2 to 4 pages. NASA, not necessarily mentioned. DOE, a couple of pages. So you got to look at your solicitations, and this is going to change again. It's evolving over time. I think, as Chris mentioned, you're going to see more of these agencies be more intentional about commercialization and calling out what they want. A lot of times they'll tell you in the solicitation. I know NSF is very prescriptive about their commercialization strategy and what they want to see in it. So in a phase two commercialization plan for NSF can't exceed 15 pages, and just kind of prescriptive. But if you go in the solicitation, there's more: market, company, team, product, technology, and competition. And then phase one, typically for NSF, you don't have to do a forecast or revenue forecast. I wouldn't, honestly. I don't think it adds any credibility at that point because you're so early typically. But later, and for phase two, you got to get to a pro forma and a revenue model. And if you haven't done that before, we can help you do that. But this is going to be important not only for your phase two, but if you're going to get out and start talking to potential investors, they're going to want to see some kind of forecast that's based on some kind of rational thought. So, all right, 11:07 I've got. Any questions? So let me see chat. Let me go to the chat.
Lou, can I throw in a couple of things that came to mind?
Go ahead, please.
Real quick. So on the NASA one, I've been a part of writing commercialization plans for applicants going after NASA ones. I do remember doing a 5 to 8 page commercialization strategy for them. Involved a lot of research, of talking with experts in the field, interviewing people, and then identifying manufacturing partnerships. So the other thing is that I remembered is they want it. A lot of times they want to see manufacturing partnerships that your potential manufacturing partnerships. So you're not going to manufacture everything in house, right? And they want to see that you have 2 or 3 manufacturers you can go to produce subcomponent A, right? That's a critical subcomponent, and reducing those risks, and your overseas imports and things like that. I have worked on getting a lot of that stuff analyzed, mostly in the phase 2, never in the phase 1, always in the phase 2 stuff, to figure that out. I just wanted to throw that in.
Good. Yeah, thank you. I don't see it. Are any more questions here? So again, you'll have our contact information. We're going to send this our slides out. It's going to be posted on our website, the video, so you can kind of go back and refer to it. So again, don't go. This is a great program. It helps a lot of people, but it could be daunting. So don't go it alone. If you need assistance, contact me or Chris or both, both of us can help you. It's not one or the other. A lot of times more eyes on a proposal is better. Again, on the consultants, you got to be careful, but there are some good consultants out there that can assist you, depending, how much liquidity you have. If you got a fast grant, you get $3,000, and that won't pay for, a full proposal, but it may pay for some review and assistance from an outside consultant. So, and again, if you've got any folks, that have won or written SBIRs, don't be afraid to tap their shoulder and ask them for a little bit of assistance. I find that it's a very, it's a very collaborative community. So
Hey, Lou, there's one more question.
Go ahead. All right, let's see. Oh, Bruce. Hey, Bruce. I thought I heard something early about loans. Are these similar to loans? No, they're not similar to loans in any respect. This is a grant, so it doesn't need to be paid back, and the government's not going to take any ownership in your business. So it is it's either a grant or, technically it's either a grant or a contract. There's a subtle difference. NSF grants, DoD's more contract, more how the contracts or agreements are written. But no, these are not loans at all, which is good, which is really good. Let's see. Our full applications, DoD, NSF, SBIR, that have been successful published. Not that I know of. And I often, and Chris, maybe you can jump in here. I often have clients ask me, hey, can you send me a sample? And I'm under non-disclosure with my clients. I can't, and I can't send a sample.
No, once those applications go in, they're locked down. There's not going to be any unless the company releases it on their own. The government will not release that proposal.
But some of these, I think some of like the TABA agencies may be able to provide boilerplate type of examples.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of templates out there.
Yeah.
Plenty of templates, and they, especially like the NSF, they'll give you the template paragraph. Like they'll tell you what the paragraph number needs to be, what the paragraph title needs to be. And
Right.
You don't change that header, and you just fill in that. And they tell you what's supposed to be in that paragraph. So there's plenty of templates out there.
Now, Dara writes that there are some examples here on the website, so that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else? I learned yesterday from our chancellor in a meeting that when I ask a question for feedback, I should wait 20 seconds of uncomfortable silence. I guess that's coming from somebody who's taught before. So I think I got over 20 seconds. So, all right then. Well, Karen.
Okay, well, that is it. Don't forget that this will be posted on our website by 5 o'clock today under training, and then go under recorded webinars. And we'll see you soon. Check our webpage for more trainings coming up.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, Chris.
Bye, everyone.